Hey, and welcome to Board with Life News for March 22nd. Today I'm going to talk about Sentient, Crossfire, expansions for Time Stories and Mysterium, as well as the Kickstarter for Stop Thief. Let's get to it. Hey, I'm Chris. Welcome to Board with Life News. Up first, Renegade Games announced Sentient. This is a new game by Alex Kevern. And in the game, you are building and programming robots to try to have kind of the most efficient city area with, programmed robots and stuff. I actually got to play a version of this game way back at Unpub 6 a year ago, and it was called Pleasantville at the time. I did a little bit of a video talking about it, I think, so if I did, that'll pop up here so you can get some more in-depth thoughts on it. But I absolutely loved it. I think it was my favorite game of that Unpub. It's been one of my most anticipated games because I knew that it got signed quite a while ago because Alex is a buddy of mine. So I am very, very, very much looking forward to this. Renegade is continuing with their incredible artwork and really nice kind of like overall vision for their games, which is really exciting. So yeah, if you're into Euros or like puzzly games, definitely check this one out. I'm not sure when it's coming out this year, but it is coming out at some point this year. So look forward to that. Plaid Hat Games has announced Crossfire from Emerson Matsuuchi. He's the designer of Spectre Ops as well as a bunch of other games. And this is a social deduction game set in the Spectre Ops universe. I've actually also got to play a version of this a couple years ago at BGG-Con. And it's a really interesting social deduction game. The theme now is basically like half of you are agents for Raxon, the like evil corporation in Spectre Ops, and half of you aren't. I forget what the name of the other faction is. And it's, kind of like Werewolf or any other social deduction game, but you're on teams, but you don't know who's on your team, and then you don't know what player on which team you need to kill. So, once you find out who's on your team, you can like kind of pretend like, oh, I'm the one you need to kill type thing to take the heat off somebody else. It's very interesting. It's a very quick playing social deduction game without player elimination. So I highly recommend it as well. And as always, Plaid Hat is just killing it on the art. They are probably the foremost company that you can just rely on their games looking really good. So yeah, this is pretty exciting. We got a little bit of news about Time Stories' 5th expansion called Lumen Fidei. I don't know. That's how I'm going to say that word. It's foreign, so let's guess that. In this, you are sent back to 15th century Spain at the end of the religious war between the Moors and the Christians for control of Spain. You are sent back trying to reclaim some kind of supernatural stone. So I bet Time Stories things happen and there's some sort of crazy thing. There's not much more information about this. Time Stories didn't really hit for me very much, but I know a lot of people who absolutely love it. And even though I didn't love the game, I really love the ideas and concepts behind the game where they have different designers designing the expansions, different artists. There's a lot of kind of variability and different ideas to explore within that system. So I think that's all really cool. It's just the kind of like doing a thing over and over, and by the end, all you could kind of do is fail. So it was a little frustrating for me. But, not a knock against the game. It just wasn't for me. So this is coming out second quarter of 2017, so that's in the next couple months. We got a little bit of info about Mysterium's second expansion, Secrets and Lies. This is going to add in more weapons, items, and locations to the game. The big thing it's going to add is it's going to add new motive cards, which would replace the weapon cards if you wanted for a slightly more difficult or advanced game, because now you're trying to figure out why somebody was murdered instead of how somebody was murdered. And since it's less connected to an object, I think it gets a little bit harder. Mysterium, I absolutely love. It's one of the more innovative games. It's a really creative use of games as a social activity. Honestly, I don't play Mysterium enough to ever care about expansions because it is so varied and it changes. Even if all the cards were identical and it played the same way, which obviously it wouldn't be because you shuffle cards and stuff, somebody else being the ghost, it would play in a totally different way with totally different kind of clues given and stuff. So again, not a knock on the game that you made it so good that I don't ever feel like I need more of that game. But I'm sure some people are very excited about this and will be very happy to have more Mysterium. This week's Kickstarter is for Stop Thief. This is the first game coming out from Restoration Games, a company that Rob Daviau and another guy, maybe two guys, announced last year, where basically the idea of the company is they're going to go back and find kind of old classic games that have been out of print for a long time, and they're going to update them in both art and graphic design, but also game mechanics for kind of our current gaming situation. I don't know how to say that. For the way games play currently as opposed to the way games played 30 years ago. So in this game, you are trying to stop thieves by like listening for them, and there's an app. In the original game, it was like a silly telephone thing where you're listening for clues and trying to find out where they are. I think it's kind of like Clue, where you have to like be in the right place and solve the mystery. But they're updating mechanics in that like the original game had roll and move. Now they're swapping that out for like a card-based movement system so that there's less just random chance. So it's a really exciting project and a really cool idea to kind of like take these games that had good ideas, but like roll and move was the primary mechanic 30 years ago, where now roll and move is very rarely in games. So like updating it so it plays the same way, but without, with kind of our more better ideas. Good grammar. All right, so this is $29 right now on Kickstarter. If that sounds cool to you, go back it. All right, that's the news for this week. Thanks so much for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe to this channel. Make sure you follow me on social media. I'm at Chris Bryan Games on Twitter and Instagram. And make sure you check out my Patreon, because I wouldn't be able to make this without all the support of my very lovely backers. Speaking of my lovely backers, that was one of the reasons I got to go to Unpub, because they help me financially so that I can do cool things like go to Unpub and see all the new games and things like that. So I was at Unpub last weekend. I'm still not fully recovered, if you can't tell. My brain isn't working quite right. And I was mainly showing my new design, Favelas. It went incredibly well. I should, hopefully in the next near future, have some really exciting news about Favelas, which is super, super awesome. Super awesome. I can't talk about how much I like Unpub enough. It's one of those cons that you should just go to, even if you're not a designer. And a lot of people often ask, like, how do I break into the industry, whether you want to be a designer or a reviewer or anything, or just kind of a person in the industry, or if, work for a company. And the thing is, I've always said, do a thing that contributes to the community, right? Like how I broke in is we made a web series that we gave to the community. So we were then a part of the community because we did a thing in the community. But we obviously had some like technical know-how and skills that not everybody has. But I would say Unpub is an incredibly good way to break in and start networking. And not networking in like a skeezy way of like, whatever, but networking as in literally just meeting people. There are tons of people. There are tons of people in the industry, and a lot of the people there are like kind of at the newer part of the industry that have only been in it a year or two. So, they're a little bit more approachable. And at Unpub, you just sit down and play games. So you have time to talk to people and get to know people and meet people. And then a lot of those people go to all the other conventions, and then you see them at that convention, and then you meet them, and then you wind up going and getting a drink with them. And then there's 3 other people that you meet. And that's just kind of how it works in the board game industry, because we're a really small, tight-knit community. And people are really open to meeting new people and stuff like that. So, yeah, I had a great time at Unpub. That's the one and only way to ever make a board game. If you want to make a board game, is you have to follow my advice exactly. There's no other options. And if somebody else tells you they're totally lying. So, all right. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you next week.